Good morning, students. It is Monday the 27th. Alright, so there's a number of things to go over today, including news, some articles, and as always, something to maybe keep your mind off of it. So first things first, guys, starting today, Santa Ana is experimenting with a more firm and organized schedule, and you can see it being projected on my screen here. I assume they are sending it out to you guys in some way, shape, or form. In my case, simply look for it getting posted in this week's Google Classroom. Having a moment there, guys. It's Monday morning. It'll get posted in Google Classroom as well as sent out on Blackboard messages. So you can see how it's going to break down. I will give you guys a more specific schedule pertinent to when I will be online. Essentially, I'm going to do each of these periods. I will have a half-hour period during which I'm live in Google Meets on my office hours. And you guys will be able to head in, preferably per period, but let's be honest, guys, there's plenty of space and plenty of time, so you can always just drop in whenever it's convenient if you really need to. We're simply just this is how I'm going to dictate the new schedule. So I'll actually be online slightly more than I was before. I was previously on for 2 hours. Now I'll be on for about 4.5. So it's a little bit more online time, but it's also going to be more scattered. As always, guys, keep in mind that if the channel is open but I'm not responding, it's probably because I'm dealing with a psychotic toddler. So just be on the lookout for that. All right. So here's your coronavirus update. This delightful bit of news. Nursing home industry pushes for immunity from lawsuits during the coronavirus emergency. So nursing homes have represented a disproportionate number of deaths from coronavirus in the United States. One, because of the obvious old age of the people there, but also because, and this is why they are pushing for lawsuit immunity, American nursing homes have famously for decades had a very negative reputation for the way they treat people, in that they basically treat them like a warehouse of the old, sick, and dying. So this is them attempting to get ahead of what they know is probably going to come when people go back and re-examine how little they are almost certainly did to prevent the spread of the virus. All right, so for you history kids, here's one for you. Coronavirus, why some racial groups are more vulnerable. And if you're wondering yourself, why is this world and not U.S. history? Well, because this is going to go on anywhere in the world, because the factors that make minorities suffer more from coronavirus in the United States and die at a much faster rate. In fact, specifically, guys, if you look at this statistic here, 72% of people who died of coronavirus from Chicago were black, even though they're only 1/3 of the population. Thanks, buddy. In Georgia, 40% of COVID cases are white, even though even though they represent 58% of the state. So we see this happening with minorities, and it is an example of history, and this is history all over the world, because it mentions here in the UK, there's still a problem, where we have disproportionate of non-majority or non-white populations. And the reason why, guys, is the stuff we talked about and stuff we're going to be mentioned in this week's Cold War and in next week when we look at the dying empires and the new states, in that we see this income inequality and we see the racial disparity, things like environmental justice, and the historical disenfranchisement or poor treatment of minority groups by empires. And yes, guys, try to remember the United States was an empire. In some arguable ways, it still is. For econ kids, here we have the 5 things to know before the stock market opened today. So a couple things. One was the Dow was set to recover slightly, but critically, guys, I want to show you this chart. You will notice the wild variation here, right? This just shows how, as always, the theories of economics are exactly that. They are theories because of panic and emotion. So we see these jumps and these drops and jumps and drops, right? This is panic fluctuation going on here. More economics, we see plans are emerging for states to reopen their economies. So states are beginning the slow process. In a couple places in California, some beaches began to reopen slowly with social distancing guidelines still in place and all that. But we see them beginning to attempt to open up their economies slightly. We also see the Paycheck Protection Program to resume, and we see the president publicly stating that he's shifting his folks to living economic damage. How effective any of these things are going to be, from the Dow to the White House's policies, that of course is open in the air. Alright, and lastly guys, we have some entertainment for you. So this game is a bit of a dark humor game. This is called Life Goes On. It's a puzzle solving game where you control a literally infinite number of knights. You have infinite lives. You are essentially sending them on a quest to find the Cup of Life, which is a version of the Holy Grail, essentially. And it's a game where you actually die on purpose. You use the corpses of your knights in order to solve puzzles, to do things like hold down switches and buttons. And if you're thinking to yourself, that sounds dark, it would be, except the knights look like this, and they're cute little silly, almost action figure-y, child's action figure Lego-like characters. So it's completely ridiculous and absurd and a delightful puzzle game, one of my favorites the last couple of years. And you'll notice it's relatively cheap. I think it took me about 7 hours to finish, something like that. So I'll give you pretty good entertainment for your buck. Alright, last thing, guys. Hang on a second. No more, buddy. It's time to play. One last thing, guys, is I will begin the process of the next round of phone calls. So I've got a lot of people I haven't been hearing from or getting any work back from, especially people who have Fs are a concern. This is like the 1 year that literally nobody should fail, guys. So be on the lookout for those. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.